Hello again and welcome back, ghouls and goblins. I hope you're having a magical day, and thank you for taking the time to support the channel. Today, we are looking at the most recent spoilers for the upcoming set, Murders at Karlov Manor, playable at your local game store as early as the 2nd, I believe, and accessible within Arena on the 6th. We'll be checking out a handful of new cards released. We do have part 1 of this video already out. This is going to be the second bunch of cards that we're getting to see, which is super exciting. And we'll be continuing to go through them as they are released. And then once we do have a little bit of a more clear picture of the set as a whole, we can begin theory crafting, which is super exciting. Unfortunately, the early access event was canceled, but that's not going to really hinder us much, just set us back a day or two, which is not too bad, right? So, again, thank you all so much. Like, comment, subscribe, become a community member by joining the Discord if you need any help with your own deck and, whatever else it happens to be. Woof! All right, let's take a look at these cards.
It's a new lap record!
Now, again, as same rules will apply. This is the first time I'm seeing these cards, so it's going to be pretty brutal. And if I do make any mistakes, please correct me. First up is the Bloodline Ripper for 6 mana. Triple black, 3 generic, a vampire, assassin, 6/5, flying, ward, sacrifice a creature. That's pretty good. That's going to be really good against control decks that don't have creatures. However, non-targeted removal will still easily deal with this. Whenever a creature dies, target opponent loses 2 life and you gain 2 life. I love it. That's very, very good. It's not a once each turn clause like Vran. Something that you can do multiple times each turn, which is pretty cool, right? We don't mind this. A little expensive, but it's a 6/5. The ward is pretty good as well. So, it still gets hit by an Edict, a Lily, a Sunfall really easily. But I do think that it's viable. And if the Sunfall was not so popular, it would be much better, right? If the Farewell wasn't around as well. And it was the depopulates, the destroy creatures, right? The Brotherhoods and burn down the house. Then I think that this would be a lot better, right? However, I think that there's just too many ways to successfully deal with it. And it's a little slow, right? So we'll see. It could, blow our minds with that ability. I think the ability is pretty good if you're going wide with a creature deck yourself. And then, if you have multiple creatures, potentially the Edict and the Lily, the non-targeted sacrifice removal is not a problem because you have other creatures that can take that heat as it's non-targeted, right? They can easily probably just sacrifice a creature too, though. So maybe it could have been a little cheaper, right? All right, back at it. And of course, it throws us to the bottom, but that's fine. We'll just scroll through. Dun, 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 dun. Do we have to do that for every card? Probably. Moving on. The Steencore Scholar, 3 mana, Flying Vigilance, 2/2. And when it enters the battlefield, draw 2 cards, and then discard 2 cards unless you discard an instant or sorcery or creature with flying. So 3 mana, 2/2 with Flying and Vigilance is pretty decent. Draw 2, discard 2 unless you discard 1. So, draw 1. Is it really that good? Right? I mean, the Vigilance is nice, but this is a rare card we're looking at. The Inspiring Overseer, the 2/1 Angel for 3 mana that draws a card as entry with flying. So, the draw 2 is good, giving you access to an additional card to at least look at. Is, good to get through your library a little bit faster. So I guess that's worth the rare upgrade here. And then, potentially the ability just to fill your grave, right? If you do choose to discard 2 cards, right? So I guess that could be quite good, as the Sultai Reanimator deck is no joke. And this could definitely be playable there, I think, right? So interesting. Oh my lord, every single time. The greatest thing is we tested it before we start recording, and it wasn't doing it. So next up, the Pyrotechnic Performer, 2 mana, 3/2. Assassin, it is a rare with Disguise 1. It's a mountain. And whenever the performer or another creature you control is turned face up, that creature deals damage equal to its power to each opponent. Now, this is no joke. It itself flips over for 2 and will deal 3 damage, which is great. Flips for 1 and deals 3 damage. It itself costs 2 just to play. I think that's really, really good. It's a 3/2, which is also decent base stats. There's no haste here. But I don't think that it matters much. And we've seen some creatures with substantial power that utilize Disguise as well, which is quite nice. So Disguise might be one of our better mechanics. It worked. Okay, maybe we'll just look at them like this as well when we can. Case of the Stash Skeleton. For 2, this is an enchantment case, a rare card. And when this case enters the battlefield, create a 2/1 black skeleton creature token and suspect it. So that's going to give it menace, and it can't block anymore, right? So it's incentivized to attack because it's basically a dead card. To solve, you have to control no suspected skeletons. So, it's either dying in combat with them blocking it. So this incentivizes now your opponent not to block it, not to deal with it, and just take the 2 damage, which is good news for you. And then once, you don't control the skeleton, it's going to be solved. You can pay 2, sacrifice the case to search your library for a card, putting it into your hand, then shuffle at sorcery speed. That is good. That is good. 2 mana, grab a 2/1, utilize that 2/1, sacrifice it, draw some cards, whatever you do, make a treasure, and then pay 2 to search your library for a card into hand? Whew. Okay. That's like a reason to play these cases, I guess. We were wondering if they were worth, the card, the slot in deck, and I think that one might be. Buried in the Garden. 4 mana, an enchantment aura, enchanting a land we control, and as it enters the battlefield, exile target non-land permanent you don't control until it leaves the battlefield. And whenever an enchanted land is tapped for mana, its controller adds an additional mana of any color. So, obviously, like Ossification will be really nice to play alongside this. Will the Selesnya enchantment deck play this? Probably. I can't see why not. We'll see. An uncommon card. Nice. A good budget option. Assemble the Players for 2 mana, an enchantment that is rare, and you may look at the top card of your library anytime. Once each turn, you may cast creature spells with power 2 or less from the top of your library. That's not bad. Mentor of the Meek, I used to really enjoy, and I think that this could go really good in a deck with that. Undercity Eliminator for 5. Gorgon Assassin, a 3/3. And when it enters the battlefield, you may sacrifice an artifact or a creature. When you do, exile target creature an opponent controls. A little expensive. It doesn't have Death Touch. It really should, right? Come on. But as an uncommon, not terrible. Sacrifice artifact or creature, exile a creature an opponent controls. That's pretty good, right? So I'd be looking out for this in limited when you see it. Culvert Ambusher, 5 mana, 4/5. Worm Horror in uncommon. And when it enters the battlefield or is turned face up, target creature blocks this turn if able. Disguise for 5. Pretty hefty, right? So paying 3, putting it face down, and then paying 5 to flip it. Of course, it is a 2/2 when it is face down with Ward 2. If you're unfamiliar with the disguise mechanic, it's something we went over in the first video. Fairy Snoop for 3 mana, a 1/4 Fairy Detective with flying, straight up common. Disguised 3. When it's turned face up, look at the top 2 cards of your library, put one into your hand and the other into your graveyard. Not terrible, but you draw Adelphia, right? So that's going to be nice to see. And, the flying is decent, and the 4 toughness is good to defend as well. Shady Informant for 5 as a 4/2 Ogre Rugskis, a common here as well. And when it dies, it deals 2 damage to any target. Disguise for 4. Not terrible, honestly. You could flip it, get a good block in, and, maybe it dies because it only has 2 toughness. And that 2 damage can clean up another target, potentially. So a little expensive, but maybe a 2-for-1. And if not, that damage can go to, not only creature, but you could 2-for-1 a planeswalker and a creature, right? So that's quite good. But also, maybe you just send it into their health points. So consistent, right? To at least get the value. Undercover Crocodile, which is great. Oh, you've done it. 6 mana, 5/5. Common again. And when it deals combat damage to a player, investigate. So we're going to be creating a clue token. We can pay to sacrifice it, draw a card. Very, very good, but so expensive, right? Disguise for 5, a little bit cheaper, but it's going to come in as that 2/2, and your opponent, of course, has a better chance to remove it. As it's got 2/2, not a 5/5 damage-wise, and maybe overcome that ward with a cheap damage spell or something. So, not bad. Cards, unlike the others, like these, I would definitely be disguising, right, and trying to get that flip value. This card, I might just play it. However, if you can risk the bisque, you get a mana reduction, right? Of course, you're going to have to wait a turn, and it's technically more expensive because you're paying 8 instead of 6. But, you're on a pay-as-you-go. I don't know. To space it out is because you can get this down for 5, a turn earlier, right? So there is value there, I think. A cool card. Magnetic Snuffler, 5 mana, 4/4 artifact creature construct. And when it enters the battlefield, return target equipment card from your graveyard to the battlefield attached to it. That is fairly impressive. And whenever you sacrifice an artifact, put a +1/+1 counter on the Snuffler. Not terrible. I mean, pretty weird. You'd have to have, and it's quite expensive as well, right? 5 mana is no joke. So you'd have to have a really good equipment to be playing this, and maybe just reducing the cost of your artifacts. I think that could be okay as well. Something a little bit more interesting here within our mythic slot. Delny Streetwise Lookout, 3 mana, 2/2 legendary creature, human scout. Human. Creatures you control with power 2 or less can't be blocked by creatures with power 3 or greater. And if an ability of a creature you control with power 2 or less triggers, that ability will trigger an additional time. That's very, very good. The 1 mana, pay 4, look at the top, whatever, put creature with mana value 3 or less in hand. Comes to mind. That is 2/1. Double draw. That's great. Last time I checked, a Brutal Cathar has power 2. Double Cathar? I mean, the Anointed Peacekeeper by extension as well there. Interesting. Um, a lot of very nice options here, I feel like. Um, I would say Adeline, but only once, I guess. And only if this was the only other creature out, right? Because as soon as Adeline's power hits 3, like the double trigger will go off immediately. So the 2 will do 2 and 3. But then after that, it's not, so. But the first clause, now those Adeline tokens are basically unblockable, is great as well. So it's I'm sure all very runnable together. Nice. Very cool. Intrude on the Mind. 5 mana, instant speed, a rare blue spell. Look out, kids. Reveal the top 5 cards of your library and separate them into 2 piles. An opponent chooses one of those piles, put that pile into your hand, and the other into your graveyard. Create a 0/0 colorless Thopter artifact creature token with flying, and then put a +1/+1 counter on it for each card put into your graveyard this way. Okay. So that's not terrible. A little expensive, but you get that creature out of it, right? So that's something that a lot of the time the control decks or the tempo, not so much the tempo decks, specifically the control decks really lack is a little bit of field presence. And we see how valuable that can be within Sunfall, right? Exile creatures, incubate X equal to the number of creatures, right? So I think it goes alongside that quite nicely. Again, pricey, not cheap, but, look at the top 5. Potentially you get a 5/5, fill your grave for later, or potentially you draw a couple cards, right? It's not bad, and it introduces variance into the matches as well, based on your opponent's decision. So I like it. Room for error, let's say. Unyielding Gatekeeper for 2 mana, a 3/2 with Disguise 2, which is, nice that it's not too expensive. Of course, you still are paying the 3 mana to put it face down as a 2/2 with War 2. However, flipping this 3/2 will allow you to exile another target non-land permanent, and if you controlled it, you're going to return it to the battlefield tapped, right? So if your opponent is going to single target remove something, you can flip the Gatekeeper for 2 mana, exile that, break the target, and it's into the battlefield tapped, right? So that's pretty cool. If they're doing it pre-combat, they'll get to attack, and now it can't defend, which is whatever. You still saved it from removal. And then if it's your opponent's thing, you just have them create a 2/2 white and blue detective, which is nice. So there are, most threats are better than a 2/2, right? Anything that does anything is better than a 2/2. So the fact that this is so versatile, being able to play offensively and defensively, I quite enjoy. It's a 2 mana 3/2 with pretty good stats as well. So pretty decent, right? You can just like zap an Elder Gargaroth, for example, whatever it happens to be, into a 2/2. Yeah, it's great, right? Sometimes you don't, turning their 1/1 into a 2/2 is no great, not good. But this I do think is pretty cool, right? So that's really what we have for spoilers so far today. A little bit shorter than our last video, but that's okay. It gives us more time to discuss each card and explore it before I just spiral into oblivion, right? So favorite cards, I think the Gatekeeper is super duper viable. A 2 mana 3/2 that can act as a protection-based spell or a removal-based spell is really, really cool. I think the Lookout could be, like a really nice 1-of or a 2-of in the right deck. I don't know if we're going to be playing it in Standard. This might be a historic or timeless card to really focus in on, these 2 or less abilities with the creatures, and maybe even this is just like a really good commander card, right? So the A lot of just like limited stuff here, depicting what archetypes we'll be playing, right? Simic, Rakdos, and Dimir. The expensive ambushers, not great. Assemble the players, again, this is going to go in that same power 2 or less deck, I think, which has been revealed to us here. Whether or not it's standard viable or not, it's another question. And Case of the Stash Skeleton, I think, is probably one of the best things we've seen today, with the ability to tutor right from your library. It's not overly expensive. It's an enchantment. You get some damage in potentially, and target for you to sacrifice or utilize in some way is good as well prior to your tutor. Not bad. And then the Performer seems pretty cool. We will have to see how many more viable disguise cards we have if we're going to build around this or not. Keep in mind, a lot of what we have seen has been non-legendary. The Performer, for example, is a 2/1. We just looked again at the Gatekeeper, a really nice, cheap, low cost, high impact card that could work well with the Performer. So maybe it's like a decent Boros Disguise deck is revealing it to us as well. Again, I can only speak coherently at length for so long. It's been a long day. But these are the newest cards. That's my first impression of everything. I like it. The new Vampire seems cool, but maybe a little bit expensive, right? The detectives are all over the place. But the disguise mechanic seems like it could be fairly powerful. The case mechanic seems like it's a card-by-card thing. In all honesty, the disguise is as well. So it's nice to see a couple new cards here and there. And again, we'll probably have a couple new cards throughout, the next little bit until the entire set is revealed. I do think we have about 100 cards so far. So, we're getting close. We're almost done. Thank you all for watching, putting up with me. I appreciate each and every one of you. I hope you have a great day. Thank you so much. We'll see you soon in the next. Do take care. Peace.